1 year ago, exactly on January the 15th, we received the diagnosis of leukemia. That was 1 day after we went to the family doctor. We noticed about a week before that our son became tired very quickly and went out of breath when walking. In fact, he only managed to walk about 50 meters. He became very pale. His lips turned bluish yellow. Despite that, he was actually fine. He ate and slept normally. So we went to the family doctor and she said she has a suspicion. And the next day, I brought my son to school as always, and afterwards, at about noon, the lab technician stood in front of our door and told us to pick up our child immediately and bring him to St. Anna Children's Hospital. She handed us over the lab results with the suspicion of acute leukemia. You don't believe it. Somehow your world collapses in that moment. At the same time, you just can't believe it. You think it can only be a mistake. It cannot be true. This is not your child that is affected. You hear the bad news, but cannot yet relate them to yourself. However, unfortunately, it was so. We picked up our child and went to the hospital. And then many tests were performed, which led to the confirmation that he had leukemia. Which kind of leukemia it was, we only found out days later. It was acute myeloid leukemia. The physician told us it can come very quickly, but it can also be fought very quickly, if chemotherapy response is good. Again, all kinds of tests until late night were performed to see how far the disease has progressed, and the first chemotherapy started right away. The first 9 days were very intensive, unfortunately with many side effects, which was really terrible. I have to admit, I cannot remember much of this traumatic period. Time flew by, we were only there for our child. Everything else was secondary. It was only our child and the devastating disease that had to be defeated. So we battled our way from chemotherapy to chemotherapy. Now, eventually, we have reached remission. My son is considered cancer-free and is currently receiving maintenance therapy. In Edward's case, this means that this type of leukemia, injections on 4 days per month are necessary for an additional year. It's still chemotherapy, but on an outpatient basis, which means we can go home afterwards. He also takes an oral chemotherapy regularly and another pill that he has to take until 3 months after completion of maintenance therapy. The maintenance therapy will last until August, and then we will see. Normally, it should be finished by then, and we will only have regular follow-up checks, like any other cancer patient. I didn't know beforehand what St. Anna CCI was aiming at. However, you simply perceive it in a completely different way, if not personally affected. I did not know that St. Anna CCI almost entirely depends on donations to do research. My child lives, also because of St. Anna CCRI. I'm really very grateful and touched, because 30 years ago the chances to survive were much worse. Only 1 out of 5 children survived, and nowadays 4 out of 5 children survive. That is, of course, the most important thing in the world for every parent.